offshore wind, solar. Dominion Energy is a leader in the clean energy transition. We're dedicated to providing reliable, affordable, safe, and clean energy as we support and invest in our communities in 16 states. Dominion Energy is building a clean energy future. Actions speak louder.
Welcome to Actions Speak Louder, a program about Dominion Energy and its exciting new projects that will lead to a clean energy future. I'm Peggy Fox, Dominion Energy's Media and Community Relations Manager in Northern Virginia. Dominion Energy is committed to sustainable, reliable, affordable, and safe energy. We're focused on reducing emissions and achieving our goal of net zero carbon dioxide and methane emissions by 2050. Today, you will learn about Dominion Energy's solar expansion. It's happening so quickly that Dominion Energy now owns the third largest solar fleet among utilities in the country, helping Virginia lead the way on solar. So first, I'd like to introduce our guests. In studio, we have David Peterson with Shine, an organization which tracks Virginia's utility-scale solar project development. Thanks for being here, David.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. And on Zoom, we have Emil Avram. He is Dominion Energy's Vice President of Business Development. Emil, thanks for coming in on Zoom.
Absolutely. Glad to be here.
So let's start with you, David. How would you describe Virginia's solar expansion?
It is at a level that is heretofore unheralded. To put it into context, right now, Virginia has just over 1 gigawatt of solar in the state, and that's throughout history. And in the next 15 years, we'll get to about 16 or 18 gigawatts, and that's each gigawatt is 1,000 megawatts. So we're on the cusp of unprecedented growth in solar.
What has led to this expansion?
Well, it's a couple things, really. We're, in a broader sense, we're looking at this confluence of the social case for renewables as well as the business case for renewables. And the social case is fairly obvious with climate change and the discussion that surrounds that. And the business case is perhaps a little bit less obvious, but the technology that solar lives within has evolved to the point that it is, in many locations, more competitive price-wise than any other source of energy. So when you get those two things happening at the same time, it's extremely rare. And I like to call it a situation where the cheesecake is health food. And that has led to a moment where the legislation of the Virginia Clean Economy Act in 2020 put what's called an RPS standard, renewable portfolio standard, on renewable energy, and it turned the goals into mandates. And so by the year 2045, as many in the audience know, Virginia will be carbon neutral. And that has made a big difference.
Yeah, it's very exciting. Emil, Dominion Energy has a net zero goal. Talk about that goal and how solar is playing a major part.
Sure. So last year, as you mentioned, Dominion Energy made the commitment to achieve net zero CO2 and methane emissions by 2050. So this applies to all of our businesses in the multiple states that we operate. But it's important to recognize that we have to do this in a manner that continues to provide reliable, affordable, as well as clean energy to our customers. They depend on us to do that, to support a vibrant economy and maintain the lifestyles that we're used to. I also want to emphasize that this commitment will really transform our company, as David mentioned, and how we deliver energy to our customers over the next 25 years. It's really an exciting time for Dominion Energy. Our employees are excited and energized about it, as well as our customers and investors.
How much solar will we be acquiring?
So, as you mentioned, and as many may know, the Virginia Clean Economy Act was passed into law by the Virginia legislature just last year, and it requires Dominion to build or procure 16,100 megawatts of solar by 2035. So, As you mentioned previously, we currently have about 1,000 megawatts of solar installed in Virginia. So it's a 16-fold increase by 2035. A really significant acceleration is about to happen. So very exciting time.
Solar comes in all sizes and projects. Let's talk about different types of solar. We're talking about utility scale. Maybe a lot of people aren't really familiar with that. What is utility scale, Emil?
Right, so most of that 16,100 megawatts that I mentioned will be what we call utility scale solar facilities, which are large ground-mounted assets spanning several hundred acres of land, typically per facility. These are the most cost-effective solar configurations, benefiting from the economies of scale achieved when building those larger systems. So, for example, a typical utility scale solar facility might be 100 megawatts at a site and would produce enough power for about 25,000 homes at peak output. That full 16,000 megawatts, when completed around 2035, would produce enough electricity for about 4 million homes. So that's a very exciting proposition here that's about to unfold.
And you track utility scale, David, and how would you describe it?
Well, it's like Emil said, it's explosive right now. We, through various means of access to public information, can track the utility scale development that's occurring in the Commonwealth. And what we see is a pipeline of, right now, over 400 projects that are in some stage of development, totaling about 30 gigawatts, which, if that all came to fruition, it would contribute about $2 billion in wages to the economy and about 37,000 jobs.
You mentioned before this confluence between people who have been, demanding action on climate change and also the business interests. How is that coming together with utility scale and combating the climate change?
Well, like Emil said, the economies of scale that can be achieved at utility scale means that you can generate large amounts of electricity with relative efficient access to the power grid. And one of the things that that's instructive is to learn how, when you turn on your light switch at home, how that electron ends up getting to your light bulb. And when you start to familiarize yourself with the way electricity is generated and the way that power is produced, it becomes a lot more self-evident, the value of this at scale. Not to say that that the smaller residential and commercial installation environments aren't significant and important, but being able to generate the kind of power that we need to reach net zero by 2045 it's going to require a lot of solar power.
You guys have both mentioned the Virginia Clean Economy Act and how that has helped make this expansion possible. The law requires a certain amount of solar. And what are the target dates for this? Emil?
So by 2035, really, that's probably the largest milestone that's set out by the Virginia Clean Economy Act. And what it does is requires Dominion Energy in particular, as well as one other utility in the state, to, as far as Dominion's concerned, petition to the Commission, our regulator here in Virginia, 16,100 megawatts of solar. We do have interim goals between now and 2035 as well that we need to meet. So you can't just, stack it all in that last year, for example.
Right.
We also have a requirement to propose 2,700 megawatts of energy storage here in Virginia. And I'll talk about that probably in a moment as to how that could assist in the reliability part of the equation. And then it also provides, an incentive to also build offshore wind, up to 5,200 megawatts off the coast of Virginia, for the benefit of our customers here in Virginia. So very exciting, a lot of clean energy opportunities coming. When you add all that together, that's almost 25 gigawatts of new generation capacity. So we have a lot to do, a lot of community engagement that we'll be working on over the next 15 years. And we're well underway since the Virginia Clean Economy Act was passed in the last year.
We have seen some challenges, a lot of challenges along the way. Some communities are fearful of allowing, a utility scale solar. I heard you say something the other day when we were chatting, David. You said this is something like a once in a lifetime, an opportunity that has been really great for a lot of these communities, and that you're worried that some communities might miss out on it.
Yeah, I think there's that potential, and it's understandable that with any new technology or any type of a transition of this magnitude, that folks in communities and places that stand to be affected in some way by this transition would have concerns about how it does affect their community and what the overall impact might be. But the value that this development represents in terms of the job creation that comes along with it, and the ancillary tax revenue that can go to schools and infrastructure and community development and economic development within these communities is not insubstantial. And there are examples of communities that are embracing and finding innovative and creative ways to bring solar development into their region, and those that are still having a little trouble becoming comfortable with the idea. And I think over time, those levels of discomfort will ameliorate. And what I think we'll see is people noticing the benefits of solar development over the years and recognize its value.
We are building utility scale solar here in Northern Virginia at Dulles Airport. Could you talk about that at all, Emil?
Sure, yes. So that is going to be a first of a kind project where a 100 megawatt solar and 50 megawatt energy storage project will be sited right there on Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority property, right around the Dulles Airport, and connected to our electric transmission system. It will actually be the first of its kind in the world, where you have transmission connected solar and storage at an airport site. We are actually in the final stages of the designing and permitting process, and expect to submit this project, among many others, to the Virginia State Corporation Commission later this summer. The Metropolitan Washington Airports Authority, who own and operate both Dulles and Reagan airports, has been a great partner on this project. And another exciting thing is we'll also collectively be able to disclose some exciting news later this fall on that project associated with airport electrification.
So stay tuned.
Very exciting project.
Yeah, you mentioned energy storage again. Talk a little bit about why that's so important. I mean, we know the sun's not always shining. We have cloudy days. That's why energy storage is so important, but there's limitations now, correct?
That is absolutely correct. So as I mentioned earlier, you have really three important aspects to delivering energy and electricity. It's reliable, affordable, and clean. Well, as you add more solar and also offshore wind or other resources where maybe the sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow all the time, you need other solutions that are also, support reliability. So, our customers have come to be used to a 99.999% reliability at home and in their businesses and communities where they live and work. And we have to continue that. That's of utmost importance. And so energy storage will play a very key role as we add more solar and offshore wind to our system. Storage can be very helpful in essentially storing power when maybe it's not as much of a demand during certain times of day, and then discharging it when that demand is much higher. Say, for example, when we come home, at 5, 6 p.m., usually there's a peak electric demand at that time. So storage will help us move the energy to various different times of day or even different times of week. And we're even looking at long-term storage where you can shift large amounts of power generated in the summer, for example, from solar to the winter. So we're exploring those solutions as well. So multi-month energy storage systems are coming, in the future.
We talked about the Dulles project. I think that's going to be the only utility size solar in Northern Virginia because land is so expensive, and it's at Dulles because we call that brownfield. Is that the correct term?
That's correct.
Yeah, because it can't be developed. So the solar fields are being built in more rural areas where land's not as expensive. But I know that there's counties up here in Northern Virginia, like Arlington County, which is benefiting from a solar field elsewhere. And I know people have a difficult time understanding this. I've had reporters ask me, well, how does the electricity from that solar field down in Pennsylvania get to Arlington County? So once again, how do you explain that? Why don't we have David explain that again?
Well, this is probably best left to the experts at Dominion, but the essential attributes are the grid. Yes. That is responsible for the distribution of electricity. And again, one of the things that a lot of people don't quite think about is when that electricity is generated compared to when it's needed. So if you come home, like Emil said, at 5 o'clock and you turn your TV on, the electricity that is there to generate that power for your television happens immediately, instantly. And so those electrons have to travel onto the grid, through the grid, and to your house. So, and that happens very, very quickly. And the interchange and the connections into the grid and the infrastructure are what allows electricity to be moved across greater distances than they generally have been in the past. And
we use the term load a lot, and that refers to when people turn on everything, and when people are using electricity the most, and it's a balancing act with electricity. We're trying to keep it balanced. Is that right? Is that a good way to explain it, Emil?
Absolutely. So, electricity, I like to say that it's the only product in the world that is produced, transported, and consumed all in the same moment. And to David's point, ensuring that you have supply and demand always in balance. And we monitor this in fractions of a second, within our system, real time, 24/7, to ensure we have reliable electric service. If we don't do that, if it's not in balance, you end up with, voltage problems, all kinds of other challenging technical issues. Equipment failures could occur.
Brownouts.
You could damage certain parts of the system. And so, it's really important that we maintain that reliability for ourselves and our customers long term.
Let's hear more about solar panels, because I know they've become more efficient over the years, and we have panels that move now and things like that. How has solar been changing and becoming more efficient? Who would you like to answer that question?
I'll take a stab at that.
Okay, David.
The technology has really evolved over the course of the past 10 or so years, and it's continuing to evolve. And just like Emil talked about with storage, that is still very much in an evolutionary stage, and we might be where we are now in storage where we were about 10 years ago with the solar PV panels and that technology. But the way that the infrastructure is built and designed so that it can track the movement of the sun and use things like artificial intelligence and more sort of big data analytics to be able to maximize the efficiency of these large-scale installations has really come a long way in the course of the past 10 or so years, and it will continue to. There are all kinds of new technologies that are on deck, and we can see in the very near future that will continue to make this yet more efficient and yet more affordable.
Most of solar is built overseas, but I know that there's an effort underway to try to get the supply chain here in this country, and that, of course, would bring more jobs and be more of an economic benefit. Could you talk a little bit about that, Emil?
Sure. So you're right. Most of the solar modules are built overseas. Largely, it's a very competitive market in certain parts of the globe. Labor costs are lower, but there is a big effort to bring some of the manufacturing jobs to the U.S. There is one particular manufacturer or solar module supplier, First Solar, here in the U.S. They're located in Ohio and a couple of other states, and they're expanding. So, they see that the demand is growing. A number of companies, not only utilities, but even corporate and commercial customers and industries have committed to net zero CO2 emissions as well. And so, that demand from them, from utilities, they're seeing a huge growth potential. And it's important that they maintain a competitive edge, as far as cost of those solar panels. So, that's the challenge that we have to meet. And bring some more of those manufacturing jobs to the U.S.
David, what makes Virginia well suited for more solar, geographically, policy-wise, politically, population, all that?
Yeah, I think all of those add up to where we are. One of the things that has vaulted Virginia to sort of the front of the pack was having the will as a society through legislation to take the ambitious steps of the Virginia Clean Economy Act, and that's going to move Virginia from sort of the middle of the pack in terms of the 50 states to the top 5 or top 10, depending upon which metric you look at. And the will of the people, I think, is what is making the most impact toward that. Obviously, Virginia is in a geography and a climate, especially with some of the central farmlands of the south side and out toward the west, that make it amenable to solar energy in particular. And it again, as the technology continues to evolve, the capacity to generate power at that scale with solar will only get greater.
We've talked all about utility-scale solar and how important that is and how much energy that's going to deliver to the grid. But more and more people have rooftop solar. I've seen carport, solar on top of it. I know we have plans for some of that. Emil, putting solar on top of parking lots. How much of a factor is that in bringing down carbon emissions?
So I do think that there is a market there. Certain individuals, whether it's residences or maybe some commercial businesses, are interested in installing solar directly on their facilities, rooftop facilities. The challenge that creates is really more about cost. It's about 3 times more costly to build, own, and operate rooftop solar compared to the utility scale solar, ground mounted systems that I mentioned. And really it goes back to the comment I mentioned before, which is the economies of scale you achieve with utility scale configuration. I firmly believe that most of the 16,000 megawatts that we plan to deploy will largely be utility scale for that reason. But certainly, certain customers want it on the rooftops, and we're happy to support that as well. We actually have one of the largest programs in Virginia with various high schools and other school systems around the state where we are installing, with a partner of ours, rooftop solar systems to help offset their electricity costs. Mm-hmm. So, there are certain customers that will always, install those or desire to have those installed on their rooftops. But really, the largest scale deployment of solar will likely be ground-mounted utility scale systems.
We've come to the end of our show. I just want to thank you guys so much for coming on and talking about solar and helping us understand it. And it's the future. It's where we're headed. So thank you so much, Emil Avram and David Peterson, for talking about the clean energy transition underway in Virginia. And if you would like more information, please go to dominionenergy.com. That's dominionenergy.com or shine.energy. I'm Peggy Fox. Thank you so much for watching, and we hope you join us next time for Actions Speak Louder. Be safe.